And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird right here from Awesemo.com. Dan Strafford, Dave Lochran along with you on this Wednesday morning. We have a 10-game NBA slate on tap for you for this Wednesday morning. Hope all of you are doing well. We are, in fact, doing well. Dave, how are you on this, we'll be honest, Tuesday night, or Wednesday morning as everyone listens to this podcast?
Better than the Phoenix Suns, Dan.
That's
a bad basketball team.
I almost made one of the worst. I have to admit, I almost made one of the worst jokes I've ever made. Just now, I'll I am it to you. I'm not going to make it here in the podcast.
Oh, it's not bad.
It flashed. There's something flashed, but go ahead.
I look forward to it. Yeah, they were on pace to lose 144-36 after the first quarter. They scored 9 points. They got outscored 36-9. It was just downright pathetic, man. Elie Okobo didn't start the second half because he was just entirely ineffective. But the funny thing is, like, Mikal Bridges has been terrible. So, man, he's still getting minutes. He's been awful, man. Absolutely atrocious. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, yeah, bad basketball team. They're not doing themselves – well, I guess they are doing themselves favors. Maybe they'll get themselves another top pick. Well, no. Maybe, I say. How silly of me. Of course they'll get themselves another top pick. The West is a complete logjam from top to bottom, right? Like the 1 seed and the 14 seed are separated by 5 wins. And then there's the Suns. So the Nuggets and the 14th seed Jazz separated by 5 wins, okay? 5 wins. That's not much, right? The Nuggets and the Suns are separated by 12. The Suns, actually, this is even better. You'll appreciate this. The Jazz are 14th in the conference. The Suns are 15th. The Suns are 7.5 games behind the Jazz. They're the only.
It's amazing.
They're only team in the West that doesn't have at least 11 wins. And that in its own right is amazing, that 14 of 15 teams have 11 or more wins. The Suns are the clear odd man out with 4. It's just amazing that, the 14th seed is 1 game out of the 8th seed. I don't know. To me, I just find it fascinating that there are 14 teams that if a month from now, all of them or one, like any of the teams out of the playoffs right now were in the playoffs, you wouldn't be surprised, except for the Suns.
Right, and you realize now that you have Devin Booker injured. I have not seen a timetable. I know we don't
have one yet.
Yeah, so it's gonna the old Wizard of Oz line. It's gonna get darker before it gets lighter. That's how bad it is. Like
there's gonna be a lunar eclipse, man.
It's bad. It's really, really bad right now for the Phoenix Suns. And it's going to be a team that probably goes up in pace, continues to just try to run with teams and stay as close, and will be one from a DFS perspective that we want to keep track of and be aware of and keeping front of mind as everything comes to pass. I do want to say here on the podcast, didn't say it on our Monday pod, but we are celebrating December and the holidays here at Awesemo.com as a gift to everyone for supporting Awesemo.com. All of our content, we're giving something away every day of December through Christmas Eve. For those in the first week, we'll give one lucky person a free NFL membership for the rest of the season. That includes all of Awesemo's rankings for every slate. That includes showdowns, ownership projections, and the premium content you could hope for. All you have to do is rate this podcast over on iTunes. You know what? The copy says 5 stars. I'm going to leave that to you. I'm going to leave you to determine what you believe this podcast deserves. Because
I think that's fair.
I think, and Dave thinks, we deserve 5 stars. But
if we don't get it, fine. But it's also, I'd rather have true reviews, and most people say, no, you're full of it. I'm not. I'd rather have legitimate reviews than reviews that are just basically trying to 5-star reviews. I'm talking about 5-star, just trying to get some free stuff. You'll get it. You'll get submitted into it anyway. No, I think, yeah, we do a good show. We give you the information you need early in the morning.
You
What
will
else?
see plenty of podcasts saying, hey, review me 5 stars and leave a comment, and I'll maybe give you something for free. We're saying leave what you want. Tell us the review, star-wise, and a comment. And the comment I'm asking for from you is your favorite moment of the Osmo podcast. It's been the DFS early bird for a short period of time now, since the merger between FanVice and Osmo.com. What has been your favorite moment of your listening?
Not just this show, but since. Yeah.
Exactly. So not just Dave and myself. You get EMAC, you get Josh, you get Jake in there as well at the early onset of this incarnation of the pod. What's been your favorite Osmo.com podcast moment? Leave a comment, leave a rating, and you'll be entered in to this contest here to get a free week of NFL membership. Oh, sorry, a free NFL membership rest of season. So head on over, iTunes, leave a rating, leave a comment. You'll be entered to win from there.
We're also doing, did you mention the Christmas Eve drawing, though?
I have not, as of yet. I was going to save that for later, but your copy, so those of you who are just listening for the first time, Dave is obviously on not only the podcast here, but he's on the strategy show 2 or 3 times a week. And then you also get him on the deep dive writing and the deeper dive on the show. So you have that copy more readily available to you. Christmas Eve, we're giving away what, Luffy?
We're giving all access annual, everything, all included, premium annual. So that membership covers you for 365 days. That's an excellent one to win, no question. We're only doing one of them, but it's worth quite a bit, and you get all access to everything throughout the calendar year.
And that
Not
is a good one.
This calendar year, for the next full calendar year. That wouldn't be fair.
But I'm sure there are people out there who do that. So we're not in that market. We are
calendar year drawing on December 27th.
Exactly. Get your value in now. We are here for a 10-game NBA slate. I will remind you of that copy later on. I will also remind you now, early bird is a promo code here specifically on this podcast. You can use that for 1 week free over at Osmo.com. And that is, again, all-inclusive for the 1 week free. We're going to go position by position here and get an early look that then dovetails into the strategy show where they go game by game and make sure to break down every possible matchup. And then that goes into the deep dive, which Dave has on Wednesday. And then you get the deeper dive at 5 p.m. where Adam and Luffy break down their favorite plays from every game. Lots of content available at Osmo.com. Let's kick it off here, Luffy. Any injuries, first and foremost, that are top of mind, ones that could influence the slate or could be at least part of the discussion as we start to discover and dive into what could be the top plays on this Wednesday evening of NBA action?
Yeah, with 10 games on the docket, you got a couple. We already know that Gary Harris will not play. He returned for, a game or two, and he was out as quick as he returned. Yep. David Nwaba remains out, Ante Dzidzic and Sam Decker. The first and third of those are more important because if you are still trying to play some of those wings, some of the power forwards and Cleveland, those guys being out makes a difference. And then outside of that, you've got a doubtful Ersan Ilyasova. Nikola Mirotic is still questionable. That's obviously a big one. That's really, I think, right now the biggest news that we'd be waiting on because Julius Randle is only $7,100. He dropped another monster game. What's funny to me is every time Julius Randle gets additional run, he smashes. But for some reason, I get that your front court, I get that the front court, there's only so many minutes to go around, right? But at the same time, you have 96 minutes, and then you say Mirotic, Davis, and Randle. So 96 minutes between the three of them, between the 4 and the 5, and Randle, Mirotic, and Davis can all play the 4 and can all play the 5. All right. Some of them better suited for one than the other. Fine. But that's 32 minutes apiece. So if you're giving Anthony Davis 38 minutes a game, I understand that. That still leaves you with 58 minutes. Okay. It's 29 minutes apiece. Well, I think personally that Randle and Mirotic should at least consistently see the same playing time, if not Randle see a couple additional minutes per game. But that has not been the case. And we continue to see Julius Randle, when Mirotic and Davis are both healthy, getting the short end of the stick. And I just don't think that's necessary at all, because Randle's been ridiculously impressive this season. And like, you might say, oh, he's not a great defender. Listen, neither is Mirotic. So just throwing that out there. Now I don't have to talk about it at power forward. If if Mirotic is out, Julius Randle in this home game against Dallas is a lock and load play once again.
And all right, that's going to do it for the. I kid.
Fine with me.
Let's go to point guard first, where we always begin. We have Steph Curry back from his injury, and there were, lots of consternation about whether or not he was going to play a full load of minutes. His first time out, went and played 36 and shot 10 of 21, 29 minutes in his second game. He has a matchup here with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Haven't yet pulled up the over-unders and the spreads on this one. I'm assuming this is a double-digit spread, even though it's on the road, but I will.
11 points.
There it is. And then you have John Wall at 9-4 against Atlanta, and Westbrook against Brooklyn at 11-2. Throwing Drew Holiday as your other 9K plus opportunity here against Dallas. This seems like a great spot to pay up at point guard for potentially gigantic output, but blowouts and mismatches need to be a concern here. Who are your favorite, or which is your favorite player here above 9K? And then we can go on to the mid-range from there.
So, yeah, we do have an 11-point spread in that game, but this is the nice thing. It's the only game on the slate with a double-digit spread. Orlando, Denver. Denver's 5-point favorites. Washington, Atlanta. Washington by 5. OKC, Brooklyn. Thunder by 7. Clippers, Memphis. Memphis by 1. Dallas, New Orleans, I don't have a line. I'm going to say New Orleans by 6 there, maybe 7. Milwaukee, Detroit, Milwaukee by 7. Toronto, Philly, Toronto by 6. That's in Toronto. Minnesota hosting Charlotte, Minnesota by 5. And Lakers, Spurs on their second of a back-to-back, Lakers by 8. I will just point out one thing, too. The Spurs, man, they lost what made them special. It's gone. It's gone, and I'm not sure it's coming back anytime soon. This is a pretty bad basketball team right now, and that's not hyperbole. They're not very good. I mean, they're 8-point dogs to the Lakers, who really aren't that great of a team. Yes, they have LeBron James, but this is not the best Lakers team. Sure, they're playing better. They're playing a lot better recently, but to be 8-point dogs, to see the Spurs as 8-point dogs is strange. They were 7.5-point dogs on the road against Utah, and they're right now getting crushed by Utah with 3 minutes remaining. They're down by 27 points. And Utah has just been a bad basketball team this year. So something to keep in mind. It's not what we become accustomed to seeing over the years. And even last year without Kawhi Leonard, they managed to maintain at least a little bit. That's gone, man. It's gone. So. It's kind of sad to see an era like that come to a close. It's been like, my whole life watching basketball almost, with the Duncans and the Parkers and at least somebody on that team that was good, and the Popovich. It's gone, Dan. It's gone. But anyway, Russell Westbrook against Brooklyn. Yeah, I think this is a good spot for him. Again, though, it comes down to what are you looking to pay for here? Because this is a slate where you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, you have Anthony Davis, you have Russell Westbrook, you have LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Joel Embiid, a lot of players. Not all of them in great matchups, but a lot of good spots. I don't know if I'm getting up to Westbrook here. I, again, never blame anybody for doing so, because Westbrook's capable of posting monster numbers in any spot. But I don't know if you need to go there here. He's there if you want to play him. He's going to be lower owned than most of these other high end guys. There's no question there. But I'm not sure how much I love him. John Wall, he's been disappointing this year, and that's really all there is to it. I don't think there's any argument there. This matchup with Atlanta, I've got to say, he's played 37 minutes in back-to-back games. Scott Brooks has done away with trying to limit his minutes.
Yep.
I think after his couple blowouts, he got 25 and 26 minutes. Now he can run him into the ground for a few more games before going back to that. But the Wizards are only 5-point favorites on the road. They've been a bad basketball team. So
you're being very kind by saying they've been a bad basketball team.
Well, the reason I say it like that without much emphasis is because they're facing like a team that's even worse than them. So 234 total. Both of these teams this season are playing at a top 6 pace. The Hawks first in pace, Wizards sixth in pace. And what's amazing is that the Hawks are actually averaging almost 4 more possessions per 48 than the Wizards. So it's actually, believe it or not, a pace up spot for John Wall. And I do like this position for him. You'll see Bazemore and Herter on Bradley Beal. Taurean Prince is out, so you can't throw like a Bazemore when he's out coming off the bench on Wall and then Prince on Beal. You can't do that. Prince is out 3-4 weeks. So Wall's going to be seeing Trae Young, who ranks dead last among 447 players in defensive real plus minus. Dead last in the entire league. Not good. So while Wall hasn't been all that impressive this year, it's hard for me not to like him here. I just really think this is a quality spot for John Wall. And I will tell you this much, Dan. Stephen Curry, the blowout risk is always real, but I will keep going back to him under 10K in spots in tournaments, and I'll definitely have lower exposure to him. But I can't help but have some interest here because when these games do stay close, Curry ends up erupting. Like last game, he only played 29 minutes. That game wasn't even competitive. And he had 30 real points. The assists weren't there, but he had 30 real points on 10 for 17 shooting, 6 for 10 from deep. We know what he's capable of doing. He does have a world of upside. He can drop 60 plus here at 9,700. So I'm not writing him off, but I think John Wall is a safer play just because I think there's less blowout risk. And that's kind of what it comes down to. Now, those are your high priced guys. If oh God, how could I, here's one that is really interesting. Actually, I didn't mention him because he's not that high priced. Kemba Walker, Dan, on DraftKings is 8,100. Now he's 9K flat on FanDuel. He's cheaper than Mike Conley on FanDuel. John Wall's 94 on FanDuel, Curry 97. Both of them same prices they are on DraftKings. Makes them really solid plays on FanDuel. You don't see that very often. But Kemba Walker on DraftKings specifically, sure, he's come back down to earth a little bit, but it's hard for me to overlook this spot. He's going to have some streaky games. He relies a lot on scoring, but he's also proven countless times in his past and especially this season that he can give you those monster performances. And at 8,100 against the Timberwolves team that, yes, I will give them this. They have definitely played better since Jimmy Butler left for Philly, which is funny because that acquisition, that trade has really benefited both teams. The Sixers are 9-2, and really 9-1 because the first game they were just discombobulated. They had no synergy or chemistry since Butler came, and I think the Timberwolves are like 8-3. So, but it's really helped both of these teams out. The Timberwolves, since Butler left, are playing at, where is it? Yes, they're playing down in pace at 24th in the league. And Dan, they have the 3rd best defensive rating in the league over that span. I just want to point out, though, that while I think they are definitely a better team without Butler, there's no question that the dysfunction in the locker room and all of that tension was taking a serious toll on them. But it isn't a spot where I say, yep, fade Kemba at 81 because Minnesota's playing much better defense. I'm still not convinced that, Jeff Teague and Andrew Wiggins and Derrick Rose are going to slow him down. So that's where I feel on Kemba. It's too cheap.
It's a price point where the upside is immense. Honestly, it drops down to near 8K. Has to at least be on your radar. Lots of options here, though, as there often are at point guard, both on FanDuel and DraftKings. FanDuel, you're playing 2, but you do have lots of talent across the position. DraftKings, you get MPE, which will create some openings. I know you and Adam bemoaned, I think, is more than a reasonable term to use. The usage of Luka Doncic here at point guard only on DraftKings.
So dumb.
Listen, over the years, and full disclosure for those of you who are listening for the first time or new to this, I worked for DK for a little while, doing some video work for them. This is bad. This doesn't make sense. And there are times throughout every season where you have to look at the multi-position eligibility and just say, this is wrong. Like this.
Well, because here's the reason though.
Because it moves.
Fine. You're right. But here's the one thing. If you had the wrong position, fine. But you can't have the wrong position where you also have another guy in Dennis Smith Jr.
Yes.
Only point guard eligible. They're both in the starting lineup for the Mavericks. They've both been in the starting lineup all season long. They've both been playing the same position all season long. That's what drives me nuts. That what is the reasoning that both of them only have point guard eligibility when they're literally Doncic has not started at point guard once all season long and will not.
Right, and it's the idea of multiple first basemen in baseball for me, where you have a Jay Bruce and, let's say Dom Smith, just for Mets examples, but Bruce is outfield eligible too. But if you just had them both at first base, you'd say, well, they're both in the lineup. Why can't I play both? And again, why would maybe a bad example on my point, but it just blows my mind that there's no human intervention here, because I feel like this is a lot of algorithm. It's a lot of, just minutes crunching. But to your point, he hasn't started there. Like it just hasn't been
stupid, man.
It hasn't been the way the construction's been. But I will say point guard, because of things like that and because of MPE, has a ton of value, a ton of high-end options, a ton of mid-tier options. It's just going to be the way it is along with center. What else do you have here? Who are some of the other names that you find intriguing? Who are some of the names that at least early on here, as we looked at it before the strategy session, before the deep dive and the deeper dive, at least may make into some interesting plays this early on?
Yeah, so I wanted to just point this out, one more thing, and then we'll close out the position, because I've been kind of pounding this on the show a lot lately, that Ben Simmons' price tag is going to keep coming down. I'm not playing him against Toronto. I don't see any reason to on a deep slate. But you and I have figured, at least over the years, it seems like DraftKings pricing algorithm factors in how owned the player is. And Ben Simmons has not been owned. And my guess is he's going to be not at all owned on this slate. And I bet his price comes even down further, maybe to 8,200 or so next time out. Over his last 8 games with Butler, I mentioned they had to get some chemistry. He's averaging 1.35 fantasy points per minute, Dan. They've been involved in some blowouts. 1.35 fantasy points per minute for a guy that in a close game is playing 38 minutes. You're up above 50. And I see this coming. I see the price tag dropping. As we've seen with Kemba, his ownership has come down a lot lately. So is his price point. So just keep Simmons in mind for when these quality matchups come around. He's going to have some really good opportunities to crush it for us, like when he faces the Nets in several days and the Cavs. So I hope his price stays down. I think it will, and we'll be there waiting for it when he does, because everyone who still thinks that he might be struggling with Butler, it's just not true. Okay. Trae Young is way too cheap. I talked about how bad he is defensively. That I don't care. This game is projected to stay close. He's $6,000 against Washington, and they're also one of the worst defenses in the entire league. Right? There's a bad Washington defense, no question. I mean, you're talking about a defense that on the season ranks bottom 4 in defensive rating. They have the same exact defensive rating as the Phoenix Suns. This has been bad, man. By the way, you know who ranks 29th? The only team that's Cavs are worse. The Cavs are the only team worse than them defensively this year.
That was one of the worst trivia questions ever.
It was tough. I'm trying to. So, who do you think has the second worst defensive rating on the year?
All right. Start over. Give me that.
It's supposed to be trivia. I'm just asking you, who do you think has the second worst defensive rating on the year?
Second worst beyond the Cavs.
Correct. Yeah, in a roundabout way, I got there, pal.
All right, got it. I mean, we have the Wizards and the Hawks here. I'm going to assume it's not them because you brought that up. I'm going to say it's because it's not them, but the San Antonio Spurs. That's the wrong answer.
Yes, it's the San Antonio Spurs. It is you got it right. The Spurs have the second worst defensive rating in the league. Now, look, I'm not saying, oh, that means everything, but what it's doing is
something.
Taking points allowed per 100 possessions, factoring in pace. Second worst in the league, Dan. Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's amazing. But anyway, Tim Frazier is getting decent minutes, and his price came down $200 on DraftKings. So I don't have an issue with that. I don't worry about, matchups with Dennis Smith Jr. and JJ Barea. Plus, he's not really shooting much. Most of his production is coming from passes, and he's averaging, you wouldn't believe the amount of potential assists that Tim Frazier's averaging since he entered the starting lineup. It's quite incredible, actually. I'm not even going to bother pulling it up right now. Oh, actually, yes, I will, because I already have that page pulled up.
I assumed you would, to be quite honest.
I wasn't gonna, but literally tracking and passing was already pulled up, so it makes my life a little bit easier. So Tim Frazier in those 4 starts, 15 potential assists per game, more than Drew Holiday. So yeah, to me, there is value there, no question. Lonzo Ball's a guy that I absolutely hate playing. And when he was around 6K and people say he's too cheap, I say, no, sir, he isn't. And Adam and I agree on a lot, like most things, but we disagree here. Now that he's at 5,200, I don't hate it. I still don't think he's too cheap, because just LeBron James has taken away so much. Even with Rondo off the floor, Lonzo's opportunities are so low that he really needs to produce and actually needs to hit shots, whereas last year that wasn't a necessity. So Lonzo's there if you need him. I prefer, believe it or not, Tim Frazier, or just pay up a little bit for Trae Young. Jamal Murray's also in a good spot. It's a deep position. I'll cover the rest of it in the deep dive.
Yeah, listen, for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, point guard is going to be where you can make a lot of right and wrong decisions. So you want to check into Lofty's deep dive each and every day. He covers it. That's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Adam, no, I'm kidding. Adam has it Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And then on Sunday, you get the projections. You get coverage via a multitude of other ways other than the write-up. And listen, this is going to be a slate that's deep. It's 10 games, so you're going to have a lot of options at point guard and ways to go. Shooting guard may be slightly different, as we've seen this year. Power forward has been a bit of a struggle, but we'll get to that in a few moments. We do go to shooting guard next. Steph Curry, and looking at DraftKings pricing here, Steph Curry at the top against Cleveland is at 9.7. Drew Holiday at 9.1. DeMar DeRozan is our first non-point guard, so he's shooting guard, small forward eligible at 8,900 against the Lakers. Brad Beal and Klay Thompson, 2 shooting guard only players here at 8,400 and 7,100 respectively. And then you make your way down to the Bledsoes and Jamal Murrays of the world. You mentioned Gary Harris is out, so Murray is here at 6,700. Derrick Rose is at 5,700. Schroeder, Lamb, all multi-position eligibility. I mentioned Harris is out. Then you make your way down to the likes of JJ Barea or Jeremy Lin, who could have some upside in their matchups at lower price points. At the top end, Lofty, who are some of the names that at least here early on you'll have on your radar?
Yeah, so I mentioned I like Wall a lot, and I actually think I like him a little bit more than Beal, because I am going to take the matchup into consideration a bit, only because Beal will see a bunch of run against Bazemore. And while Bazemore isn't exactly, the best defender in the league, he is better than whatever they're going to throw at John Wall, right? So they're actually pretty equal for me, though. And the only reason I have Beal a little bit lower is that, and the fact that his price came up. But what also works for Beal is the idea that Scott Brooks has no intention of lowering his minutes. Kent Bazemore this year's defense has been way worse than we've seen in the past. And I think collectively, it's one of the things, the most difficult things to do in basketball is to find an accurate statistical measure for individual defense. It's not easy. So you take some of that with a grain of salt. That's something you really have to watch to get an idea of how active they are and how good they are. Otherwise, you're just getting a ballpark estimate. So the team's so bad. I still think Bazemore is decent defensively. But Beal's price came up a bit. He was an outstanding play at $7,900 the other day, despite what what one may have said. And he came through big time, 27, 8, and 7. And I've talked about this year, Bradley Beal's peripherals have been really solid. And you like seeing that to mitigate a bad shooting performance. He basically is maintaining the same rebounds, assists, and steals as last year, but he's averaging more than a block per game. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And he's doing this through his first 24 games, right? I don't think this is an anomaly. You're seeing Beal with a lot of these chase down blocks or closeout blocks, and I love it. It might not be a lot, Dan, but all of those little things add to it when you're playing or when you're priced where he is. But he's also playing 40 minutes in close games. So factor all that in, and I still don't think Beal is out of consideration, especially given that, like, Drew Holiday coming off that monster game. We liked him the other day, which is good, but I'm not sure he was a priority for anyone given the slate. But 71 fantasy points, he absolutely demolished. I am still a big fan of Holiday. I think he fits really well in this offense, even though there are so many other mouths to feed. But that's a really steep price point. Now, he's 96 on FanDuel and 91 on DraftKings. I don't think I can pull this trigger there, even though I like him. I think you can act. I guess what it is I just think in terms of consistent production, you can get better value elsewhere. And actually, Beal is one of those guys I really like. Although he's not a priority either because the price has come up. So I guess the question is, do we have any guys at this position that are too cheap, that make too much sense, and are really good plays? Well, I think in tournaments, one guy stands out just because his price is bottoming out, Jimmy Butler. And the biggest reason for this, Dan, is that Jimmy Butler has basically been very hit or miss in every game with the Sixers thus far. And not just in the fantasy points, but oh God, in terms of usage, I just burped like 7 times in a row. You know where they get stuck? They get stuck?
I do.
Oh boy, that was intense. I feel like they still haven't gone away.
That was my fear and why it's going to be a show. It's going to be good.
Yeah, not enjoyable. But Jimmy Butler taking his first, I think, 11 games with the Sixers, not positive, but not important. Listen to his usage rates. 33%, 20%, 17%, 28%, 25%, 19%, 18%, 20%, 23, 20.4. So we've seen like several games at 25 or higher, one at 33, one at 28, one at 33, and then a bunch below 20. So you don't know what you're getting here. But what I will say is I think Joel Embiid could struggle. I think Simmons could struggle. And I don't know. I guess Kawhi guards Butler. So obviously it's not a good spot. But he is the type of guy that is just such a high energy when he wants to play for a team, a high hustle guy. $6,900. I'm going to sprinkle in 5 or 10% of Jimmy Butler if I max out entries on this slate, just because that's the type of price tag that in any matchup, we know that Butler on a good night can absolutely beat. Now for guys that are actually viable in cash, because Butler certainly isn't. Are you willing to look at somebody like Kevin Huerter? This is the question. He played 25 minutes or 27 minutes and 25-34 his last 3 games. He is $3,700 on DraftKings. The shooting guard position is actually pretty weak.
Yep.
And now Taurean Prince is sidelined. I do think Kevin Huerter is a guy that if you just want to punt, you go ahead and do so. Again, you're not super excited about him, but you can do worse here. And I expect him, assuming this game stays competitive, I expect him to play 30-plus minutes against a Washington team that, as you know, Dan, and even when I said that they're bad, you had an issue with that because they're so much worse. I feel like this is a spot where Huerter could actually put up respectable numbers because the Wizards are allowing the 4th highest 3-point percentage in the league. And a guy like Huerter is going to need to jack up and hit some threes. He's going to see a ton of open looks in a game like this.
4,600 on FanDuel. On DK, he checks in at 3,700. I have to again say, is there anything worse than the FanDuel Discover tab? Like, it's one of the worst.
Oh yeah, right. It's really dumb. Like has anyone ever used it?
It's really, really bad. Every time I come to the page, I'm like, oh, right, they did this, and I don't know why. We continue on here.
Where is it?
It's when you first get to the website, technically, that's the Discover tab. And so they give you this weird UI of games, And again, if the rest of the site was laid out that way, I'd mind it at first, but I'd get over it. But the rest of the site is still displayed the way it always was. So you get this weird mismatch. It's just bad. It's bad. Anyway, I was searching on both because I didn't know if he would be small forward eligible anywhere, or however we're pronouncing his name, because I don't pronounce any names correctly. But
at least we know it.
I own it, in fact. But he's shooting guard eligible on both, 46 on FanDuel and 3,700.
It's Herter, by the way.
Yeah, sure. Huerta.
Yeah, what do you think? He's French, or I'm sorry, Spanish?
Yeah, that was definitely much more of like a
with Ricky Rubio, Kevin Huerta. What the hell are you doing?
Kevin Huerta.
Real close.
A boy can dream. Small forward is up next. And remember, you're leaving a rating and your favorite moment here from the DFS early bird. Maybe it just happened. Who knows? To enter to win a NFL package for the rest of the year here on Awesemo.com. We go to small forward next, and we look at Giannis at the top, LeBron, KD, Kawhi, DeMar DeRozan, Ben Simmons, Paul George, Tobias Harris. Let's just have every possible top-end small forward on the same slate. And that's not to even mention, you brought up Jimmy Butler. You have Aaron Gordon down here at 6,800. And then you move into the likes of Covington, Gallinari, Jeremy Lamb, Rudy Gay against the Lakers at 5,700. But we pretty much have everybody here, right, Lofty? We have all of the potential top-end plays at small forward. You have three guys above 10K, Kawhi, DeMar DeRozan, Ben Simmons, Paul George, all below. And Paul George, the cheapest of the three here against Brooklyn. Below 9K, I should say, DeRozan, Simmons, and then Paul George at 8,300. Lots to like here, lots of upside options. Who are some of your favorites?
Yeah, several of these guys have small forward eligibility, so I'll just mention them here. I was going to mention it. Shooting guard. DeMar DeRozan, the Spurs are playing their second of a back-to-back. After getting smoked again, I wouldn't be surprised to see Pop say, all right, you know what, Rudy, LaMarcus, you're gonna sit this one out, and see DeRozan just get a ton of run. I mean, if Aldridge sits anytime soon, like you're loading up on DeMar DeRozan. It's just that simple. And it's against the Lakers, 222 total. Very, very, very enticing pace-up game for the very enticing game for the Spurs from a pace-up standpoint. The Lakers obviously play at an elevated pace. So I would just urge you to keep an eye on it, because crazier things have happened than Pop benching or sitting his veterans in a second of a back-to-back. Lakers play at the fourth fastest pace in the league. Spurs play at the sixth slowest. So just keep that on the back burner just in case. And if you need some value, Alec Burks is there in a game where they're going to need the three-point shooting. And Rodney Hood is also very cheap. Both of them super volatile guys that rely solely on scoring to produce their fantasy numbers. But at the same time, if this game somehow stays close and Hood gets the run, he could give you 30 fantasy points. So you could definitely do worse. Antetokounmpo, interesting here. The Pistons actually have a really solid defense this year, believe it or not. Like, they're, as a unit, they're playing very solid defense. They have a top 10 defensive rating this year. They actually have a positive net rating, which is pretty surprising. They're playing solid defense. They're also playing at a, what is it? I think middle of the road, 19th. Yeah. So the 11th slowest pace, pretty much middle of the league. But their defense has been good. There's no question. And I do wonder, with Drummond on the other end, like, is Giannis going to struggle to rebound, or not only struggle, but with his price where it is, are we going to get what we need from him? He's averaging almost 3 offensive rebounds per game, almost 11 defensive rebounds. So I think sometimes that's overrated, saying, well, this guy might take boards away from him because the rest of his team rebounds so poorly. And it's not like Drummond's going to soak up all of the boards on his own offensive glass. So I'm not hugely concerned about that, but it is something that makes me question whether or not Giannis is worth plugging in here.
Sure.
Detroit this season is allowing, so the 14th most rebounds, right in the middle of the league. And it makes sense because they don't have any good rebounders outside of Drummond and Blake, although they're both above average rebounders for their position. So Giannis just pure upside play, pure kind of ignore the matchup and play him because he's spectacular play. And also because I think this game does stay competitive. Detroit's playing good enough basketball right now. And the Bucks really aren't. They just lost, Dan, to the Knicks. And they barely snuck out a win over Chicago.
Am I reading correctly? So I try to sort on NBA.com by full season and then last 10 games, and I'm seeing Giannis at a sub 30% usage over the past 10 games. Is that accurate? One, and two, what the hell are the Bucks doing if he's sub 30% usage?
It makes sense. If you looked at his minutes, you'd say no, that doesn't make sense. Or I'm sorry, at his field goal attempts. But considering the amount of minutes he's playing, it's not. It does make sense, right? Because if you play 40 minutes and you take 15 shots, your usage is not going to be 30%. Unless you play on like a team that averages 80 possessions per game, that's not going to happen. So yeah, I think it is under 30, but you're also seeing him bounce back with some monster fantasy performances. Again, why Adam and I say all the time in the deeper dive, there's only like 2 guys in the league with that just upside that every night can go above 80. That's Anthony Davis and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Yes, you could throw Harden into the mix and Westbrook and even Joel Embiid, but Giannis and Davis are the kind of guys that when it happens and happens like 3 straight games, you get why, because they both rank so high in points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals for their positions and in the league. So yeah, I think Giannis is a perfectly fine player. He's just simply too good to ignore. And what I was saying though is the Bucks lost to the Knicks. They barely beat the Bulls. They lost to the Hornets. This is going in order. They won by 6 points over a bad Spurs team. And then they lost in regulation to the Phoenix Suns. They're not playing that great right now, but that's actually good for Giannis. Notice that over this stretch of games where they're playing poorly, Giannis has been producing huge totals with 30-plus points now in 5 of his last 6 games. I don't think it's a coincidence. So you say, his usage is down more, but that's only because he's playing so many damn minutes every single night.
Makes sense. What else do you have here at small forward? Obviously, Giannis at the top. LeBron, Kawhi. There are just tons of pieces here. What else do you have?
All right. Well, there is a lot. You're right. I don't think I'm going LeBron here. If I'm going to pay up at small forward, it's going to be for Antetokounmpo. I think that makes perfect sense. Just the ceiling and the consistency recently is too much to ignore. Kawhi Leonard's interesting. I don't like paying that much for him, and I probably won't here, to be honest with you. But as I've said so many times, the Sixers are a team that they've just sprung leaks or really allowed monster games to really 1 or maybe 2 players, individual players from their opposition each game. And then it's like they almost funnel things to defensively through 1 or 2 guys and keep teams from spreading the ball around. But instead of Kawhi, I'd almost have more interest going to Kyle Lowry here because his price has come down. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him have that big game. With Kawhi Leonard, you're going to be hard pressed to justify paying that price for him on a slate where we just have so much damn talent. And I feel the same way about a lot of these guys. Paul George, I will keep mentioning him because last 2 games are blowouts. His minutes were severely limited. He's averaging 27 minutes, I think, over his last 3 games. That's definitely not normal. They've won all 3 of them in blowouts. Even since Westbrook came back, Paul George is producing very solid per minute numbers, 29.5% usage rate. Everything is still there, and he's playing huge minutes in competitive games. So with the Thunder only being 7-point favorites, which to me, that's not that much, especially on the road. I think George, whose prices come down to 8,300, makes quite a bit of sense. And the last one I'll give you here would be Otto Porter against Atlanta. We know why. Atlanta's terrible, fastest paced team, allowing the highest 3-point percentage. Everything you could list that's bad about a defense, it would probably be applicable when it comes to the Atlanta Hawks.
A lot.
Oh, and DeAndre Bembry, but I think he's a pretty obvious play with Prince out. That, you know what I mean? That's pretty obvious. Everyone knows that DeAndre Bembry is going to be a guy with a lot of popularity tonight.
You'd be surprised, but everybody knows. I think more often than not, we are surprised by it. And it's funny, and I'm not getting to the politics of it, but the Kareem Hunt aspect of everything, where there were people saying, well, I don't want to talk about it. I do want to talk about it. If you don't know Spencer Ware is his backup, and I know Ware maybe busted a little bit for a lot of people. If you don't know Ware's his backup and Ware's going to get a lot of touches in this matchup, maybe you shouldn't be playing fantasy football anymore. But that's
probably
just,
not.
that's my opinion. But let's go on to power forward. We roll on here on the DFS early bird. You do have Giannis eligible here. You do have LeBron, Kevin Durant, Kawhi, all small forward, power forward eligible, along with Paul George. But we do get AD. We get Blake Griffin. You throw LaMarcus Aldridge into the mix here. And then you do get Julius Randle, who Dave has already touched on. If you did not hear that at the top, you can always rewind back and listen to his analysis here. I'm sure he'll give you a snippet of it here as well. Power forward seems to have some pieces here. It's been a little bit of a minefield on the year, but I feel like at least we're getting some decent price points and some upside in some of these matchups. What do you got at power forward?
So, yeah, no question. Julius Randle, I'm not going to repeat everything, but if Mirotic is out, Randle is a clear top play. It doesn't even matter that he's playing alongside Davis. We saw what he did last game out. He deserves more minutes, and when he's getting them, he's rewarding all of us. So that's all there is to that. But I also think Anthony Davis is a very good play here. I just simply don't see how they're going to have any answer to him from a personnel standpoint, because you've got, you look at this front court, DeAndre Jordan, fine, but DeAndre Jordan just isn't going to be able to hang with someone like Davis, who has range, athleticism, can move everywhere. It's going to be tough for Jordan, no question. Actually, it might not even be it might not be the craziest thing to see Jordan guarding Randle if Mirotic is out and Randle starts, because Randle is not one of those players who's routinely jacking up a lot of 3-pointers. He's attempted a few this season, but Anthony Davis is someone that has attempted more, especially per 36, and will take more. Or I'm sorry, not per 36, just more in general. I guess the disparity isn't as large as I thought, but still, Anthony Davis just has better range. Randle likes to live closer to the basket, and Davis can do it all. I'm not worried about this matchup with Dallas. That front court is not very scary whatsoever. And Anthony Davis, much like Giannis, continues to be one of the highest ceiling players in the league. Really, just him and Giannis. It's a nice thing to see, and as long as he stays healthy, we should be all right. But yeah, Davis is taking 40% almost of his shots from 3 feet or closer to the rim, and then 10 feet or closer, I think 22%. But then you're seeing that 15%, 13%, 13% from 3 different ranges going out to the 3-point line. He can get buckets more than just around the rim. So he's in play for sure. Julius Randle, who else here? I had one that I really liked. I want to find. Oh, here it is, Dan. My guy, Jaren Jackson. His price has come up a little bit. And, of course, foul trouble is an issue. I got to say it every single game. But this is one of these spots where I think he can really smash. I mean, he can thrive in pace-up environments, no question. And this is a big pace-up spot for the Memphis Grizzlies, who are playing at the league's slowest pace, while the Clippers are playing at the 9th fastest pace, 6 possessions per 48 more or higher than the Memphis Grizzlies. And when he's not in foul trouble, Jaren Jackson was in foul trouble last game. The game before he wasn't. He had 50 fantasy points. Big foul trouble the game before, did nothing. Wasn't the game after that. Even though he had 5 fouls, he still played 30 minutes, 44 fantasy points. Game before that, 35 minutes, 38 fantasy points. If he gets the run, Dan, Jaren Jackson is going to reward you. I don't want to say every time, almost every time, but in a matchup like this, it's just such a good spot. I love him. I think he could give you 4 blocks, 20 points, 10 rebounds at $6,500. Very, very palatable price point too.
It's a situation there where we've documented plenty of times the foul disparity, but upside is definitely one to behold there and one to take a hold of. Anything else worthy here?
He's a really good player.
He's fun to watch too. And listen, like I use fun to watch somewhat tongue in cheek, because I used to refer to Yasiel Puig that way when it came to fantasy sports, and it's become sort of something of a crutch for me. But the way he plays the game is fun. Like he goes after it. And I think he's an athletic, bigger guy who once the foul trouble gets controlled, and hopefully it does, he's going to be a force. He's going to be somebody who
Yes, he is
going to be legitimately causing havoc for opponents. Anybody else here, a power forward that at least early on here worth mentioning, or ready to move on to center?
I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being the best player out of this draft.
I do not have as hot takes at times. I tend to sit on the fence, but when all is said and done, that wouldn't surprise me. Like that wouldn't surprise me when all is said and done from this draft.
I mean, he still had Ayton and Doncic and Trae Young and a few others, of course.
Doncic feels like I think he's a good basketball player. He just feels
like he's going to be very good, but he's never going to be a
slow motion.
Yeah.
He plays in slow motion, man. Like it's such a slow and he's good. Like he's very good, but it just feels like there's no move. There's no speed to his game at all.
That's fair. I mean, I'm not going to make an assessment on what I think he's going to become quite yet.
Sure.
Well, I know he's going to be a very good NBA player, but I see Jaren Jackson and maybe Doncic too. I'm not knocking the guy, Mavericks fans, not at all. I just see Jaren Jackson.
By the way, it's Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D.
I just see them as or Jaren Jackson being a guy that they will build around and could end up being elite. And I think the foul trouble as he matures and gets older is going to at least dissipate a little bit.
It's teachable.
Yeah, it's certainly teachable.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. If Aldridge plays here, I like him against the Lakers quite a bit. They got blown out. He played 21 minutes. So this probably is, you know what Pop did? They were down really early, and at halftime, they were down by like 20 plus points. I'm looking at it now. Pop played basically none of his starters for much run at all to close the game out because of the back-to-back, I'm assuming. DeRozan played 24, Aldridge 21, Rudy Gay 18 and a half, Bryn Forbes 19. Nobody got big minutes here. Nobody played more than 24 minutes on the entire roster. So that means that Aldridge could be a very interesting play against the Lakers if they can keep it close. Can they keep it close? I don't know. It's a good question. But if they do, Aldridge could give you really solid numbers here as a scorer and a rebounder, and he's 7,800. Last guy I'll throw at you just as a flyer, Serge Ibaka. Joel Embiid's a great defender, but opposing centers have really, really put in work against them this year. They're allowing the most points to the position, the second most rebounds to the position, and I think the highest efficiency to the position as well. It's actually a pretty good spot for Ibaka, and he's been very efficient from a shooting standpoint this year. So that's what I got there.
All right, let's close it out with center. A reminder, don't forget, you can leave your favorite moment here from the Osmo.com podcast, now known as the DFS Early Bird, formerly known as the Night Shift, in the comment section here on iTunes. You can also do it on other podcasting apps where you hear us. Just make sure to let us know over on Twitter, Osmo_com. Shoot us a message there letting us know with a screenshot. You left a rating, you left a comment, and then you'll be entered in to get this free NFL package for the rest of the season. And then on December 24th, which is also known as Christmas Eve for those who celebrate, there is a drawing for a 365-day, also known as a year, package, all-inclusive. So you get everything at Osmo.com for 1 year. You'll want to enter. And Lofty points out on the live shows he does over there on YouTube, the more you enter, the more opportunities you have to win. So every time you enter, every time you comment on a show over there on YouTube, you like and you subscribe over there, or here on iTunes, whether it's me and Lofty or Adam and Emac, you get entered again therein. I will say we want to earn it from you, so we want the honest feedback across your rating and your comment. But I think we've earned it over the years. I will say that. We go to center. Let's close it out here. Tons of talent. As always, a 10-game slate is going to be deep at this position. You already talked a bit about AD. He's at 11.5. Joel Embiid is at 10.3 against Toronto. Towns, Jokic, Griffin, Drummond, Vucevic, Gasol, Aldridge. Well, let's go to Gasol as our final sort of stopper, 8K and above. Gasol has a matchup here with the Clippers. Vucevic has been damn good this year. Like, he's been fun
Yes.
to watch on the low post. He's just been doing a dynamic job. Adam did a great job writing him up the other day, reading a lot about assist percentage and rebound percentage and all the different things he's doing just a tad differently this year to be an upside play, even at 8,700. Price tag dropping down from 8,900 last time out. Towns has been dynamic.
9K.
Oh, 9K, right? 9K on Tuesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Embiid obviously has had an MVP-worthy season to start the year. Center's deep, and I'm only talking thus far of 8K and above. Who are some of your favorite plays?
You know, I love Embiid, and the per minute numbers are through the roof. You can look at his last few games and be like, oh man, look, Embiid's coming back down to earth. Well, not so fast, because over his last 3 games, 2 of them have been monster blowouts, right? So if you're not taking that into consideration, I don't know what to tell you. Look, over that span, Dan, I'm running numbers right now. Let's see, over that span, 1.6 fantasy points per minute. You know, against Memphis, he only had 41 fantasy points in 38 minutes, had a tough shooting night, and Marc Gasol will do that to you.
Yep.
22 minutes against Washington, had 43 in 22 minutes. So basically 2 fantasy points per minute, 59 in 30 minutes against Washington. So the minutes are going to come back up. And I think this game is close. But I also don't know if you need to go there because it's such a difficult matchup. Now, the one kind of thing that makes him interesting to me is that of these high-end guys, he's $1,300 cheaper than Giannis. He's $1,200 cheaper than Davis. He's $900 cheaper than Westbrook. So you are getting him at a discount. And Joel Embiid is capable of putting up huge numbers in any matchup. He dropped 55 in 32 minutes against Toronto earlier this season, and they got blown out for most of that game. So if he plays 38 minutes, Joel Embiid, in my opinion, even despite the matchup, is still a little bit too cheap. But you also have Nikola Jokic, who he's been maddening this year. I mean, huge triple-double last game, and that came off of like 6 or 7 games where he just did nothing. He's really difficult to predict. It's really tough. But in close games, Nikola Jokic is a guy that can put up huge numbers. And I expect this game to stay close. The Nuggets are 5-point favorites on the road against the Magic team that's playing pretty well right now. So, yeah, Nikola Jokic, while his price came up, I think $1,000 since the last time he played. I think it was $8,200 last game. Yeah, it came up $1,000 on DraftKings. The price kind of sucks, but I do like him here in this matchup. I think he has easy 60-plus upside. Julius Randle is also eligible here if you want to play him at power center, but I think he's much better suited at a weaker power forward position. Who else? Always Drummond. Drummond's always in play against the Milwaukee team. Their interior defense is not impressive. Vooch, second of a back-to-back. Denver does a good job of limiting rebounds. It's not to say that he can't put up solid numbers, but he is still very expensive, or I guess reasonably expensive, but you're going to have to pay for him. I'm getting away from Vooch. There aren't a ton of teams playing a second of a back-to-back. I don't think you need to go there, that being one of the reasons. Steven Adams against Brooklyn, though. Here's an interesting one. Because Brooklyn, even though Jared Allen's defense has significantly improved this year, as a team, they've still really struggled against centers. And Adams, I think in this game, gets his 32, 34 minutes, maybe more, and is priced very, very reasonably for a guy that is averaging, north of a fantasy point per minute. I think 1.15 fantasy points per minute. Nothing. It's pretty solid. So I definitely like Steven Adams. And John Collins was pretty much a lock it up type play the other day. The only thing that sucked was center had so many great plays. He was 5,300. He's only center eligible on DraftKings. If he was power forward eligible, that would change the game entirely. I'd have him everywhere. Seriously. Even at 6,300, I'd play Collins everywhere against Washington. Because for a guy that averages like 1.08 fantasy points per minute for his career, can produce 1.5 fantasy points per minute in a matchup like this. So I love him. Will he be easy to fit? Probably not, because he's only center eligible and he's power forward on FanDuel, but he's $7,400. It does make life a little bit more difficult. Just understand that this is a really good spot for Collins, and no one would blame you for playing him. Same with Dewayne Dedmon, Dan. I don't know what to make of the minutes because nobody does. at the 5 in Atlanta. But Dedmon played 31 minutes last game, and he's sub 4K. I think this is actually a really good spot for Dedmon because Washington, with Dwight Howard off the floor, is the worst rebounding team in the league. Dedmon could be a really great sneaky punt at $3,900 on DraftKings, and he has power forward eligibility.
I will say when we start to record this, we do post this to YouTube. I think actually a large majority of the people who tune into this podcast watch it over there. And Lofty and I have talked about streaming live, and we'll probably do that in the future. But Steven Adams is what I did for the thumbnail. Steven Adams was once I looked at this slate and looked at the matchup and looked at the price tag. And listen, Jaren Allen, as David just said, has been much better. But he's been much better on sort of that, the blocks and the rebounds. On the actual defensive there's some holes there in the Nets overall game, and I think this is a big opportunity for Steven Adams to have a big night. Again, there's lots of value, and I mean, per dollar value at center. I like Adams a lot on Wednesday night, and somebody who I keyed in on early when thinking about doing this podcast. So right there with you on Adams. Any other thoughts here before we close out the podcast? Any other final centers or anybody you feel like you missed across the other positions before we go into the final few moments here of the podcast?
Yeah. JaVale McGee, definitely a risky player. There's no question. But his per minute production over the last 3 years is really, really good. Like I'm talking 1.25, 1.3 fantasy points per minute over the past several years. And now his minutes are coming down, so it's a concern. But at the same time, if he does see 25 minutes in this spot, I think he can smash. Spurs on the second of a back-to-back. He is a phenomenal shot blocker. Aldridge doesn't stray too far from the rim anyway. He lives kind of around the elbow if he's traveling out of the paint, and he's a big post-up guy, second most post touches in the league this year, or second most post-ups in the league. JaVale McGee, obviously a huge risk, clearly a tournament-only play, but he's down to $4,800 on DraftKings, and I'd be lying if I said that isn't a little bit enticing, because it definitely is. We know that he can block 6 shots in like 15 minutes. So why not roll the dice? I don't like him as much as Dedmon because he's more expensive.
Yep.
But it's not crazy to consider JaVale McGee here.
All right, and closing it out as we have become accustomed to do here, 10K and above, and I know I'm leaving out Curry and Towns and Wall, sub 10K, but 10K and above, so we're talking 5 figures here on DraftKings. The players we have eligible here are Giannis, AD, Russ Westbrook, LeBron James, KD, Joel Embiid. Of those 6, again, Giannis, AD, Westbrook, LeBron, KD, and Embiid, who would you be most likely at this present moment to build around?
At the present moment, who am I building around of all of these guys? It's going to be Giannis or Davis, because I think we're going to have enough value to where it might not matter. So Giannis or Davis would be the guys, followed by Embiid in tournaments because he's too cheap. And last thing I'll say, Karl Anthony Towns, I forgot to mention him at center, but I still see him being a viable play. Charlotte's front court defense does nothing to scare me. I don't think I'm going to play a whole lot of him, but we'd be remiss to not at least mention him. So, yeah, Giannis and Davis, and then some Embiid in tournaments because that price point for his upside is too low.
All right, so don't forget, for those of you listening on iTunes, leave a comment and a rating. And for those listening on YouTube, I should have made more specific here. Leave a comment on this podcast, which is available on youtube.com with a rating, a thumbs up, which would be a rating here, and a comment of your favorite awesemo.com/DFS early bird or formerly the night shift moments, whether it's me and Lofty and Adam, Emac and Adam, Josh, Jake, whatever pairing or solo artist, and leave it in the comment section, and we'll choose somebody for a rest of season NFL package, and you'll be entered in to win that year-long subscription for free to awesemo.com. Also, the more you enter, the more opportunities you have to win. Don't forget that. Find Dave on Twitter at Lofia_D, LOUGHY_D. Find him on SiriusXM, Sirius 210 XM 87. That is the Osmo Show over there. It's Dave and at times, most times, Manny Laura co-hosting there. That show from 5 to 7 on Saturday and from 7 to 9 on Sunday. And find me on Twitter at Dan Strafford. Find me on FNTSY every Saturday morning from 8 to 10 talking NFL. And we'll be back with you Friday morning, getting you ready for Friday's slate of NBA games. Tomorrow, you get E-Mac and Adam. With that said, we wish you the best of luck on Wednesday night. We'll be back here with more of the DFS Early Bird.